Now, our next speaker is coming not from quite so far. He's a speaker, a qualified speaker from District 100, which is probably about less than 40 or 50 miles from here. And let me make sure I have my the right introduction. Yes, here it is. Dr. Michael Alexander is Michael Alexander's grandfather was a civil rights lawyer in Selma, Alabama in the 30s. A fight against racial injustice is bred into his family. As a Jew, he has personally experienced and fought against anti-Semitism, and as the husband of a Taiwanese native, he has an unfortunate firsthand knowledge of anti-Asian sentiment. Today, the world is inflamed over racial prejudice and discrimination. That Michael's experience is that we don't understand what we are fighting. And if we don't, we can never win the war against it. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we will hear Dr. Michael Alexander give a short section of one of his signature speeches, Racism. It's bad, but it's not what you think. Dr. Michael Alexander.
The speech will probably work better if I unmute myself, so I'm going to try that. My neighbor across the street is from Taiwan, and she recently went back there, and she mentioned while talking to me about it, the people she encounters, including the Chinese. And she said, I don't like Chinese people. I guess that makes me a racist. And I looked at her and I said, no, ma'am, you're the same race. What it makes you is someone who has strong cultural preferences. And that's a very different thing. Now, I've been in Taiwan and I've been in China. I've been in China, rural parts where there was no electricity, guided by drug dealers who didn't speak English. And I've been in the Museum of the Palace in Taiwan, where the Taiwanese greet me and make sure that I can see all of the wonderful things there too. And the Chinese tourists come and they just rush to see things, and it doesn't bother them if they block my sight. The cultures are different. I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but they're different. I am a Jew. That means that I have a different attitude towards personal responsibility, towards forgiveness, towards money and education than Christians. I'm not ashamed of that, but I don't expect you to look at me and say, he's a Jew, there's no difference. There is. I expect you, or I hope you'll like it and tolerate it, or at least accept it. I have been on the south side of Chicago. I, a white man, have been miles from where another white man walks. And the blacks look at me and say, he's not from here. We don't know why he's here. And that makes them nervous. That's generalizing. They can tell. On the other hand, if I'm in my compound in Fontana and I run across blacks in that compound, and I do a lot when I walk, they look at me and I'm a fellow working class homeowner, and race is irrelevant. A lot of what we think of as racism is xenophobia. It's what people aren't used to and they don't know how to handle. A lot of it is what we look at and what we see and how we see things. We all know the story of George Floyd and Officer Chauvin. Very few of us out here know that Floyd and Chauvin knew each other very, very well. This was not a white cop meeting a black stranger. This was a white cop meeting someone who he strongly disliked and having the tools to express his dislike, violent tools. And that's an important thing to be aware of. The problem was fundamentally not his racism. It was the animosity between the two men and the fact that he didn't have the right tools to deal with his animosity. He didn't need fundamentally racial equality training. He needed anger management training. Now, if two neighbors, one of which is black and one of which is a racist, see each other, there'll be name calling. But if a cop who's trained in techniques of violence has that same racist or angry attitude, then there's a problem. And there's a different problem, and it's a worse problem. Where I live, people think the stereotype is Asians can't drive. And every time an Asian is in an accident, they say, see, there's the proof. And that's a problem. But it's because if we see what we know, or we see what we don't know and are afraid of what we don't know. So we need a different set of ways to approach the xenophobia and to deal with the generalizations. We do a lot in this country of assuming because people are not educated, they're not smart. I particularly hear this from people saying, well, gee, all of the people who vote for Trump are not college educated. Now, I'm not supporting Trump, but that is a fundamental assumption that people are less valid because they don't have education. And let's face it, in this country, statistically, blacks are less likely to be educated than whites. Doesn't make them worse, but it means that our feelings about the uneducated spill over to our feelings about people of a different culture. And that's something we need to work on. We need to look at differently. My goddaughter's ex-fiance, and thank heavens he's an ex-fiance, was a jerk. He was an idiot. He was chauvinistic to the point of misogyny. Everybody could tell it about him. Now, he happened, as it turns out, to be Asian, as is my goddaughter. They're both from Taiwan. Well, people in the area that he lived in, which is the same area where my wife went very comfortably to graduate school years earlier, referred to him by a number of nasty racial epithets. And you know what? That's because when you're mad at somebody, because they're a jerk, because they're an elitist, because they're a misogynist, you don't say, well, what is the politically correct? What is the mentally correct? You say, how can I hurt him? Now, he can deny being a jerk. He can't deny the fact his eye shape is different. He can't deny that his skin texture is different. So those are the words we use. What we need to learn to do, my friends, is accept the fact that people are different. Blacks have a different cultural experience than whites in this country. I would expect them to be different. We've got to say, that's all right. Or deal with our anger as we deal with our anger. But accept their difference and learn to deal with it. Racism is not just about race. It's about the assumptions and the xenophobia. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that presentation on an issue of the day. I love issues of the day.